Before you can get views on your YouTube videos, people have to actually click on your video's thumbnail. The quality of your thumbnail is arguably even more important than your title when it comes to someone's decision of whether or not to watch, which is why it's so important to make great thumbnails. But what makes a great thumbnail? In this video, we'll answer that question and share 9 tips for making YouTube thumbnails people will actually click. Let's get into it. Hello creators, I'm Ben Tolson from Podia, where we empower creators like you to make a living doing what you love. When we perform a search on YouTube, we're presented with a lot of information. There's the thumbnail image, of course, and any visuals or text in that image. And then you have the video title, channel name, number of views, upload date, and a preview of the description. But before we've even had a chance to make conscious judgments about the text, our brain has already started categorizing the visuals in the thumbnail, taking note of photos, colors, faces, and other graphic elements. This means the thumbnail could be your first and best opportunity to convince someone to click. And with the 9 following tips, we're going to help you make the most out of that opportunity. Tip number 1, make it interesting. This is a pretty obvious tip. The more interesting something is, the more your eye is drawn to it. But how do you apply that practically? The word interesting is pretty broad, so here are a few more specific examples. Use humor. If it fits with your brand, humor can be a great way to get someone's attention. It could be things like an oversized head, animals with human facial expressions, or good old-fashioned slapstick comedy. It doesn't have to be super funny, just humorous enough to get someone to give it a second look. Use clever imagery. Can you edit your image to stretch the rules of nature or make something look magical? Maybe you could make yourself look like you're flying or make the object you're holding glow like a magical orb. Visuals like this get our attention because they defy our expectations of reality. Use mystery. Try to find an image that makes the viewer ask, what happens next? It could be something like a tunnel that leads to somewhere unknown, a partially opened book, or the outline of a hidden object. We're curious by nature, and when something is mysterious, it's hard to resist the urge to investigate and learn more. Tip number 2, show your face. Out of a grid of images, the ones featuring human faces will tend to draw our attention first, especially those expressing big emotions. This is one of the common explanations for the widespread use of thumbnail face. But there's a good reason people use emotive faces in their thumbnails. Emotive faces get clicks. This can be an especially powerful technique if you run a personal brand or you're closely associated with your brand. So be sure to make time before or after filming to make faces at the camera. Tip number 3, optimize your text. Even though your brain registers visuals first, if you plan to use text in your thumbnail, it's important that you consider how your text is presented, both in appearance and content. 3 key techniques for optimizing your text are: make your text easy to read. In most cases, this means you'll need to use fewer words so your text doesn't appear too small in your thumbnail. You also want to make sure your text color contrasts well against the background and that you choose an easy to read font. Use your video title. If you have a long title, you may not be able to use every single word, but at least use a condensed version that matches keywords in your title. This will help with your search rankings. Bold or highlight important words. If there are a few words or a phrase that would really get someone's attention, use bold, all caps, a larger size, or highlight the words to stand out from the others. Tip number 4, use the correct image size. In order for your thumbnail to display correctly, you'll want to make sure you're saving your thumbnail image with the correct size and dimensions. YouTube recommends your image be 1280 by 720 pixels and no larger than 2 megabytes. Many design programs have templates specifically for YouTube thumbnails, and in a future video, I'll show you that feature and walk you through how to build a thumbnail in Canva. Tip number 5, use an eye-catching photo. You don't necessarily need text or fancy graphics to make a compelling thumbnail. Sometimes all you need is a beautiful photo. A beautiful photo tends to stand out from the typical thumbnails and offers the eye something different. The goal is to get someone to notice long enough for them to also read the title. This can be especially effective if you're using a still from some of the footage in your video. And it doesn't have to be a scenic nature shot. It can be a photo of a meal, a street corner, a group of people, your workspace. As long as it's a beautiful photo, you have a good chance of getting someone to take a deeper look. Tip number 6, stand out from your competition. Speaking of standing out from the typical thumbnail, it's always a good idea to see what other videos are ranking for whatever keywords you might be targeting with your video. This is a great practice for determining what other keywords you should use and how you might title your video, but it's also an opportunity to see how you could stand out. Look for common styles, colors, or even fonts used by thumbnails ranking for your keyword, and then use something different. Are most people using an orange background? Maybe try something blue. Are most people using a surprised face? Maybe use a smiling face. One method I like to use to see if my thumbnail stands out is to take a screenshot of the results, then photoshopping in my thumbnail. This gives me a good idea of how my image will appear alongside the others. Sometimes your best competitive advantage is simply looking different enough from the competition to stand out and get noticed. Tip number 7, consider the scale of your images. Your background photo or that picture of your face may look great at 1280 by 720 pixels, but you have to consider how your image will look once YouTube scales it down for their grid. For this reason, you want to make sure the subject of the thumbnail looks great and is easy to see even at a smaller thumbnail size. Like we did with the previous tip, you can take a screenshot of a YouTube thumbnail grid and Photoshop in your image, resizing it to see how it looks at a smaller scale. YouTube will present your thumbnail at various sizes and it'll be seen on devices with different screen sizes and resolutions, so be sure important elements in your image will look great at any size. Tip number 8, use branding. If you have a logo or brand-specific fonts or colors, it can be a great idea to incorporate these into your thumbnails. In the beginning, this can help set you apart as appearing a bit more professional or official. But as your channel grows, people will also come to associate your branding with information they can trust. When they see your brand, they'll be more likely to click because they know they'll get good content. Tip number 9, keep it simple. While we recommend using the previous tips and rely on many of them for our own thumbnails, that doesn't necessarily mean you want to use all of them on every thumbnail. If a thumbnail is too busy visually, it can actually be a deterrent for viewers and keep people from clicking through. This also doesn't necessarily mean you should only use a solid background and text. For this tip, you'll need to go with your gut a little bit. Look at your image and ask yourself, does this seem too busy? Is the message I'm trying to convey in the thumbnail clear and easy to understand? Is everything in this thumbnail necessary? Trust your instincts with this one and you should be fine. And we have a bonus tip. Make a relevant video. What I mean by this tip is in your video, deliver on the promise of your thumbnail. If you have an adorable picture of a dog in your thumbnail, I better see clips of that dog in your video or we're going to have some words. When you deliver on the promise of your thumbnail or even your title or description, you're building trust with your audience, which will increase the likelihood that they'll watch your videos the next time they see one of your beautiful thumbnails. And those are our tips for making YouTube thumbnails that get clicks. In a future video, I'll show you how to design a thumbnail for free using Canva. In the meantime, do you have any tips for making awesome thumbnails that we didn't mention in this video? Leave them in the comments below. If you found this video helpful and you want more content like this, click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you'll be sure not to miss any future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.